Welcome to the ADHD Creative Club podcast, the place for neurodivergent creative entrepreneurs and freelancers to learn new ways of navigating the ever-turbulent world of life and business. Ever spend 46 years masking so hard that even you don't know who you are anymore? Well, that was Katriona's life until she got diagnosed with ADHD at 55 years old. And finally, everything made sense. Labelled a gifted child whilst feeling like an alien in her own skin, Katriona spent years being misunderstood. A classic story of ADHD undiagnosed in women. But here's the plot twist. She is an internationally recognised tattoo artist and painter in her own right. She's raised neurodivergent kids as a single mum whilst building a thriving creative career on her own terms. You're about to hear how Katriona turned decades of feeling different into her biggest strength, why she paints her best work when life is absolute chaos, and the one piece of advice that changed everything for her. If you've ever felt like you're too much, too different, or like you'll never make it as a creative, buckle up, because this one is for you. Enjoy. Welcome back to the podcast today. Katriona, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So firstly, I guess I just wanted to ask you about your initial journey as an artist. Like, where did that all kind of come from? Was it something that you were always doing as a kid, or like, what's your journey been?
No, it was quite a significant moment, actually, where I kind of discovered my love for creative arts. And I was 9 years old. There's a whole bunch of blanks in my memory, but certain things stick out. And there was a specific teacher who kind of saw that there was something different about me. And that's a whole different story in itself. That was probably the first time that neurodivergency was missed with me, but it was before it was even explored with young men. So it's kind of a decades old story. But this particular teacher tried to kind of show some support and encouragement. And I can remember doing this painting, and it was kind of how I felt in my own little world. But it was myself as an alien.
Wow.
Which is ever so literal if you think about it now. So for a 9-year-old mind to come out with this, and it ended up going into this kind of stateside exhibition or something like that. So that was the first time I can remember kind of going, wow, I'm able to actually express something about who I am and how I feel through the means of visual art. So that was 9 years old.
Wow, that's incredible. So that teacher, I guess, that was kind of encouraging you there, you know, did they get you to enter it into the competition, or was it, you know, something you were doing just in a class?
Really, kind of supportive, because at that age, and it's again kind of where you start revisiting things, knowing what you do now and knowing what you do about your own neurodivergence now. But at the time, I was just a very shy, insular, incredibly quiet, well-behaved, which we all now know are kind of symptomatic of young kind of biological females with ADHD. So, you know, there wasn't the kind of acting out that they tend to show you in textbook. It was kind of head down, very socially inept at the time. But as I said, he seemed to see something and kind of explored it quite fully and coherently. He had me sit like a whole bunch of testing. I remember being kind of separated from my classmates, and I went through kind of like a full week of testing. Spent that whole time, of course, thinking, what's wrong with me? But it was this kind of entire being seen by someone, I think. And this is why this teacher kind of really resonates. And to this day, I'm incredibly grateful for what he did. Kind of set me on the journey of. It's now that a lot of those pieces are falling into place, and it's now that I kind of also regard that as the first time, kind of out with my family, that I wasn't diagnosed with something.
Yeah.
I was told that there were certain things about me, but I wasn't diagnosed with something.
Yeah.
If that
That
makes sense.
That must have been very confusing for you.
It was confusing
and hard to take.
It was isolating. The result of that particular testing was that, and again, this is something that you see as a common thread in a lot of people who are late diagnosed, but the results of the testing is that I was considered a gifted child. And that's now something that people are saying is a correlation with a lot of neurodivergencies if you're diagnosed down the road. So the result of that is that I was put ahead in school. So they felt that I was academically gifted. They felt that I had incredible pattern recognition, this kind of thing. And I was put ahead in school. This is in Canada, so it was a different education system. But what I can remember the results of that being on a personal level is that I felt even more isolated socially, out of my depth
Absolutely. I can
socially.
imagine.
And then this huge expectation was on me to be like incredibly forthright academically.
Yeah, I've heard a similar kind of story before with kids that kind of get moved up. I just think I understand that, you know, you need to be challenged potentially in education, and like there's certain things that need to be done to make sure you're still progressing and learning and you're not getting bored. But at the same time, especially for someone like you know, or I think about social situations as well now. You know, I'm nearly 40. Like, you know, it's a nightmare. And when you're a kid, there's so many other things going on as well. Even for kind of neurotypical children.
My father had been in the Air Force, so we moved a lot, but we didn't just move from town to town. We moved from country to country. And by the time I was 9, going through those tests, I had lived in my 4th country. And this was all within months of yet again moving to a completely different country. So I was already kind of like wobbly as shit when it came to kind of my social skills, figuring out where I kind of stood in the world. And then kind of within this very short time period, I'm kind of thrust into, you know, people who are socially a lot more bonded. And I just remember it being a notably difficult couple of years. And as I say, that's on top of the expectation.
Yeah.
I'm like, I need to do well academically, but my feet were super wobbly.
That's quite interesting then in terms of, so the art that you were then doing, obviously it had been recognized as well as another thing. Did you find that was like your escapism then from that pressure, and it was just somewhere to be comfortable?
Anything creative became pure escape, and it became pure comfort. I would be in quite a large family. I would be the child who would be in my bedroom sketching. I would read book after book after book after book. And till this day, that's still part of my routine. I have to read before I go to bed because it's that little slice of kind of creative calm. And it's now that I have my ADHD diagnosis that I can understand that it's the thing that would stop me ruminating. It will stop me overthinking. It will stop the spiral of anxiety. So that's reading, music, and painting and drawing. So as I say, it's quite interesting being able to look back through these time periods with a completely fresh perspective and go, that makes sense. That's why I was calm. That's why I was productive, because I was involved in those kind of creative pursuits.
Yeah, again, so common, I think, for people who are late diagnosed, and there's so many aha moments from when you are so young. It's like, and it all starts to kind of fall into place and make a bit more sense. So obviously you've had that pressure, you're moving around quite a lot, and you're kind of doing well with your art. So how was the rest of school for you then? Like, how was that journey after you've been moved up, and how did that kind of end up?
I would have told you 6 months ago, I would have said, then I developed social skills. But with this recent revisit, and it's bearing in mind, my official diagnosis came a month or so ago. So it's a whole bunch of like synapses. And obviously you go through the process when you start understanding that you're probably neurodivergent. But to get the confirmation, it's hard not to then just constantly kind of go back and revisit and kind of look at things with fresh eyes. So I would have told you 6 months ago that I developed social skills. What I now see it is that I developed a better maths.
Yeah.
So by the time I was in high school, thankfully with the education system that I was in, school was fun. School was every John Hughes film that you ever saw. It was prom, and it was being able to wear what you wanted, and it was the various social groups and the overlaps because of what you were into. So you were actively encouraged to kind of enjoy your education. So you'd want to be there. You'd want to progress. You'd actually really want to kind of do something positive with your life. So by the time I got to the latter stages of high school, I had a really kind of solid social circle, some of whom I'm still in touch to this day.
Amazing.
But it's hard not to kind of look back on that and go, I just got better at trying to fit in.
Yeah.
I just developed that knack for kind of going, okay, you are just a weird kid. So you're going to have to find this kind of commonality with people. And one of the things that again, to this day, I'm incredibly grateful for all that I joke about it being kind of classic East North American high school. The thing, what you would get is that it didn't matter if you were in a particular kind of social sector, if you were like the rockers or the goths, or it didn't matter what kind of group you were in, what your ethnicity was. Nothing mattered when you were in art classes. We all kind of came together. So it was this beautiful kind of melting pot of so many different people and personalities and characters, but we would bond over art. And as I say, to this day, I'm grateful to be in touch with so many people that I share kind of art classes with. But there was still the pressure to do well academically. But I wanted to go to art school. And there was a really, really good art school in Toronto. And that was my goal, was to get into that particular school. And it was going to be a case, if I don't get into that school, I'll wait a year and I'll try again. And then I'll wait a year and I'll try again. And I still have my letter of acceptance. I got in first try. I was the only person in my entire school who applied that got in. So I was incredibly proud of myself that I managed to do that. I was the weird little kid in the family. And by the time this all came round, everyone was already completely embroiled in their own lives and journeys. And there wasn't the support and encouragement. I think that absolutely integrated to how I am as a parent. I've been a single parent for a long time. The instinct was to cherish and support them for exactly who they are as people. And I think that there is a direct correlation from kind of how I was raised. And it was very much kind of, it doesn't matter who you are, what you do, as long as you don't hurt people, as long as you put good into the world, support who they are as individuals, rather than what you can see within a lot of family dynamics is that trying to raise them who you want them to be. Or you see a lot of kind of raising children to live vicariously through them, or to achieve the things that you yourself didn't get to achieve. And I think it's getting to that point of going, no, let's celebrate you for the unique person that you are. And whatever you choose to do, and if you change your mind a million times, like my son has, you support them anyway. Try a million things until you see what fits. Cut your hair a million different ways until you know what you like, dress how you want to dress. My first tattoo was when I was at art school. So at the time, again, it was fairly unusual for women to have tattoos in the first place. And I can remember being in this art school, and there were like 1,400 people in students at this school. Again, it was the 80s. So I can remember this guy, and he had flames. He just had like flames put on his arm. And we're all crowded round going, wow, this is mind blowing. Like, you can actually use your body as art. And it goes to show just how unusual tattoos still were at the time. And it's such a different world to now. No one bats an eyelid if I'm walking around the city now. Nobody even kind of looks at me twice. But in the 80s, even when I had my first tattoo, it's kind of this, oh my God, can I touch it? Like, and people would. I shouldn't get into that one too much. People would. It was, treating you like a bit of a sideshow. And another girl showed up and she had this tiny little ankh on her hip. And again, we're all crowded round. Like, this was such an unusual thing. And I ended up going out and getting a tattoo when I was 19. And I was the first person in my family to do it.
So when you got those first tattoos yourself, obviously it's very liberating for you.
Yes.
But did you obviously had the art background at that point. Did you immediately think, oh my gosh, I want to be a tattoo artist? Or was that something that came later?
No. That came way, 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 way later. There was a very heavy patriarchal system within tattooing at the time. And again, it wasn't something that you saw a lot of women do. It was a very male dominated environment. It was a very intimidating environment, especially for a very young, very naive, socially inept person like myself. But I do know that I went through the process. I was very proud of myself, and I was back 2 weeks later for another one.
That moment then that you obviously graduated art college, and how was that? How did you do? And then what were the next steps from there in terms of your career?
The next step was a total dive bomb. It was a complete dive bomb at that point.
Okay, quick pause, and I mean quick, because I know your ADHD brain is already wondering what's for dinner. If you're vibing with this conversation, imagine having a whole community of creatives who also actually get it. People who understand why you have 47 browser tabs open, why you started 3 businesses last month, and why just make a list is the worst advice ever. That's exactly what I'm trying to build at the ADHD Creative Club. Head to the ADHDcreative.club right now, yes, right now before you forget, and sign up for tips, tricks, and real talk on surviving as a neurodivergent creative entrepreneur. The ADHDcreative.club. I'll put the link in the show notes because, let's be honest, you're not writing that down. So, all right, back to the conversation.
My father ended up unwell, and he decided that he wanted to move back to the UK and retire in the village that he was from. As the youngest child, the expectation was that I would come across with them. So ended up with the, kind of education of my dreams. And I went from that to living in a tiny little village in the Scottish Highlands with a population of 1,000 people.
Oh my gosh.
And I literally just dive bombed.
Yeah.
Absolutely dive bombed. And I can remember being told through the education system that I probably wouldn't make it as an artist anyway, because I wouldn't firm up on one medium, one theme. I wouldn't be recognizable because I didn't just, and this is kind of, 20, 21 years old. You're never going to make it because you like to do too many different things.
Yeah.
Right. So it was very easy to kind of lose heart and roll with the kind of family expectation of, kind of spend a year becoming like a raging alcoholic in the middle of the Scottish Highlands in my early 20s instead of living the life I should have been living.
So there was nothing there to kind of.
And it was a 10-year period where I didn't do any art at all. Wow. Like at all. What got me back into it again was having my kids. I think when my daughter was maybe about 2 years old, I decided to do just a little sketch of her, which is actually just over there on the wall. And that opened it back up again. So for me, it was having a family. It was having my children and knowing what art did for me as a child. It kind of brought it back out again. And then I was able to go, you're not bad at this. Like you are good at this. And it would be anything from kind of painting them toy boxes and anything I could do creative. And it was kind of how, I kind of set the tone for the kind of mother I wanted to be, because I thought I didn't have autonomy over a whole bunch of stuff in my life, but I did have a choice over the kind of parent I would be. And creativity then very much came back into the foray at that point. Where I am now is I'm at a point where I can paint if life is good, but if life is really shitty, I will still paint because that's the kind of energy I'll put into things. For example, if things are kind of bleak in the world, if I've got kind of worries and woes, if you're looking at what's going on in the world, if there's any kind of, this is quite a powerful part of it when it comes to my portrait art, for example, the kind of fine art side of it. When there's like social injustices, that fires me up. And that's when I'm going to want to do a painting where I can kind of shine a light on a social injustice. Or if I'm going through a particularly hard time with my mental health, that's when I'll do some art and kind of use that as the in to utilize my voice.
Yeah.
So I can use art to kind of express those things where I might not find the words.
Yeah.
But it's been a lot of years of kind of honing.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I think it's a game changer for anyone who's neurodivergent. And very much why I think people are kind of figuring it all out now, going like the whole 9 to 5, it was never going to work for me. I've tried it. I don't necessarily want to people on any given day. Right? Masking is exhausting.
I totally agree. I love being an entrepreneur and running my own diary and being able to take time out if I need it. I'm understanding that a lot more in terms of if I'm hyper focusing on something, I need, time for my brain to kind of catch up again. And I can rearrange things so that I've got time to spend time with my kids. And then, I think that's also so important. And in terms of that then, so when was the moment that you started to really get traction with your art, I guess? And when did you think I can do this and, you know, get to that success that you've achieved that you were talking about?
A couple of years in from having my kids and doing what I was doing at that point and getting back into my portrait art, because that's what my true love is. I ended up, because I like my tattoos, and of course I had a lot of tattoos. I ended up being encouraged to visit tattoo conventions and sell my art, because at the time that wasn't a particularly big thing. So I'd rock up with a stall and I'd be the only one who was selling kind of visual arts. From there, I ended up getting freelance work for Tattoo Magazine. Again, where you can kind of look back in hindsight and saying that having fingers in multiple pies really can be like a plus, because
Yeah.
you don't lose your exuberance if you can kind of chop and change what it is that you do. And at the time, I was very into my photography as well. So I ended up doing a lot of tattoo artist interviews. So I would do the
Yeah.
photography and I would do the kind of the writing and this kind of thing. Like quite a few of the major UK tattoo magazines, I would do freelance work for them. But
Awesome.
that got me into the tattoo side of things. And from that is how I eventually ended up entering tattooing itself. And I was very let down yet again, end of a relationship, financial situation, and a very good friend of mine within tattooing saying, well, if I teach you, it's going to help you determine your own diary, but also help you support your children. And that's where that came in. So I was
Right.
really late entering tattooing.
Gosh. And
Yeah.
then, how does it, how it must be very different. I mean, it's still an art form, obviously, and you're still, you know, showcasing your art, but that must have been a scary moment the first time you go. What would you start? Were you tattooing? Was it pig skin
Oh,
that you
no, no,
practiced
no.
on?
I've never used fake skin.
Wow.
For me, I was taught you use people. If you go into kind of fake skins, if you use pig skin, they're not living,
Mm.
breathing. You can't determine kind of a lot of things that you have to work with, like depth. You know, pig skin's not going to sneeze, right?
Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
not going to learn. You're not going to. My mentor kind of no straight onto volunteers. I had to tattoo him, then I had to go into volunteers. Then you tattoo yourself, so you end up with like calves full of absolute garbage.
Yeah.
What we all collectively know as apprentice flags, because you have to tattoo yourself.
That must have been fairly scary, but at the same time, just having that backbone of something to cling on to so that you could
Yeah,
still do your art. That was like the perfect scenario, I guess, for you. Was it at the
it's
moment?
worked out perfectly. The balance, I have to say, in hindsight, has worked out absolutely perfectly, because it meant that I could take my kids to school. I could
Mm,
be at every event.
mm,
It meant that I could be a parent first and foremost,
yeah.
and kind of work it around my schedule, if that makes sense.
It's incredible that you've still managed to hold on to your creativity and you've ended up, you know, in this journey where, as you were saying before, you've had such success with it, you know, staying creative, you know, you've got this lovely family, you've raised these kids, you've been present, you know. When did you decide to kind of go down the route of perhaps a diagnosis for your ADHD, or was there a moment where obviously you might have always known there was something different? Like what was your thinking there?
I had no idea. Like it's literally been just a lot to process, because it's not something that I suspected for a long time. My son approached me during the first year of COVID. And he was at the time in college, and the things that he was studying in college were athletic based. My son was a little athlete, and he approached me during that first lockdown, and he said, "Mum, I've been reading a bunch of stuff, and I have a feeling that I have ADHD." So it was like, right, okay, let's sit down and talk about this. So it came from my son, which is no shocker when you think about it. And he ended up, strangely, deciding to, not even strangely, if you think kind of young man in particular, he decided to completely change what he was doing academically at that point. And he says, I think I want to try something creative. So we then put him through the process of getting diagnosed. So he ended up changing his courses, and he decided to do A levels in photography and graphic design. So it was like, wow, I didn't expect this, because he hadn't really shown that want or wish to enter a creative field. And
Yeah.
what ended up happening is that he absolutely thrived. He was a natural. He's got an incredible eye. And without bias, he is incredibly good in these particular fields. He was finding his own path in his own tribe. So naturally, I was going to support this. But again, it's quite funny when people kind of look at us as a little family unit now, because in the same way that they were like, how come your kids aren't completely tattooed? And it's kind of like, oh, well, no wonder they're creative. It's because you're their mom. And I go, no, they're creative because it's the paths that they chose. But where we've ended up with from that, when my daughter was at university, she ended up coming to me a couple of years ago and saying, do you know what? I've been reading about girls with ADHD, and I think I am too. So we're then like, wow, this is, okay, let's look into this for you. And it was only maybe about a year and a half ago when I was doing a bit more digging for her. Okay, how does this affect women? How does this affect girls? And then I start dropping on how does it affect women later on? And, how does this affect women who are going through hormonal changes like menopause?
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of going, this is me. And now we can joke about it because, as I say, I've been a single mom to them since they were early days in primary school. And it's quite funny when we look at it because, I'll go into their rooms and go like, can you bring the dishes out? And not realize that I do the same thing. Or, how come there's 17 empty Coke cans sitting next to your bed? Well, I'm the same. We all do the dopamine spends. We all go like, I'm broke, I'm stressed, so I really have to go to TK Maxx and buy a candle. Like, that's going to make my life so much better. And then that bag will sit in a corner in your bedroom for the next year until you rediscover it. So putting all of these pieces together, we figured that the reason we didn't figure it out is because we all do the same shit. We
Yeah.
all do the same shit. And my house is always disorganized. When we start putting these pieces together, and I can remember having the conversation with my daughter and saying, do you know what? I think it's me. I think I'm the cause and reason here. And she's going, oh, I already figured that out. And then it was maybe when I was in the process of going through, because I went through Right to Choose through the NHS, and I ended up going down to visit my son at uni, and I sat down with him. We were having lunch and a cup of coffee. And I said, I think it's me. I'm in the process of getting a diagnosis. He's like, holy shit, mom, how come you didn't figure that out before? Right. I knew that. So he's at his third year in university. He does gig photography, he does graphics. He's put his finger in every creative pie and he's made it work for him. They don't do what I do. They have found their own respective path. And he is in kind of fashion marketing.
Yeah.
I'm a fine artist. My daughter's an interior architect. We're all creatives.
Yeah, that's great.
So how did we not figure this out?
Yeah, it's so true.
It's so weird when you.
Yeah, I'm so grateful actually that I've kind of had, I've had my diagnosis when I've had, which has been very recent as well. But seeing those traits in your kids is like you suddenly go, it's like, oh my gosh, and you get annoyed about stuff that you're like, oh my gosh, this is me as well. Exactly what you were saying.
Yeah.
But then it means I can give my eldest, that extra time and that extra opportunity. And when she really doesn't want to do something and she can't articulate it and she just can't get the energy to do it, I'm like, I get it. Like, I'm not going to fly off the handle because you can't do this thing. We're going to do it together. We'll mimic each other. We'll body double so that we can do it. And I've got all these techniques I'm learning that is then, I can then give to her, which is
it's
great.
It's funny what you learn about yourself while you're learning how best to be a support and an advocate for your own children. And it was actually game changing for us because I can remember there was a period of conflict with my son, kind of the teenage years where it's kind of expected and anticipated anyway. But there were so many instances where I might be speaking with a client or just discussing artwork or a tattoo with a client, and he would rush into the room, mom, look at this. And I'd be like, hold on. And he'd run out and, I'd get frustrated. We'd both forget what we were doing and it would cause conflict. So once we had that knowledge, notably with him being ADHD, and it was quite wonderful actually, because we both found that way to kind of meet in the middle. And this is before I even went through the process. So I found it easier to go, do you know what? My son needs my attention right now. He matters more than my phone. Put your phone down and listen to what he needs to tell you, because it's then understanding that if he doesn't tell me in that moment, it's going to go clean out of his head. But
Yeah,
I'm sitting
so
there on
true.
my phone going, if I don't reply to this message at this moment, it's going to go clean out my head. So I kind of make that mental note, scribble it down, and then I turn around and he would get my full attention. But at the same time, he learned to navigate that in his own respective way, where he would go, right, I'm going to hold this thought just in case it takes mom a minute before she can actually give me her attention. So it kind of, where we were kind of pulling apart a little bit, it was that way that we learned to kind of communicate in a better, more kind of structured way, I suppose. And it was game changing. So the path that you're on in that regard, because you're learning about your children to be the best benefit for them. But as you said yourself, if you're only recently getting your diagnosis, the journey of self-discovery all over again.
Yeah, it's so
it's
true.
insane. But you're smiling, and I get it, because I'm just like, right? Like, how did we not figure this shit out before now? But it's amazing what you can take with it moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think obviously you've navigated parenthood, your successful career. I'm thinking about the people that will be listening to the podcast, and you've given some great advice there. Is there anything that you feel is important that you've learned throughout this time to thrive as a creative, but also, as a neurodivergent person in this world? What's worked for you that maybe people can kind of go away with from this chat?
The advice I would give is to really just be unapologetically you. Like, go through your life just being absolutely unapologetically you. One of the interesting things that I was told about people with ADHD, where it was like, wow, like this makes so much sense, is that even if you feel that you have to kind of mask and do what you have to do to fit in, people with ADHD are good souls. And one of the things that we're not good at is being manipulative, or, even though you have to mask, you're not inauthentic.
Yeah.
And that can be one of the downfalls, is because you do expect everyone to be like you and to be as kind of forthright as you and be as kind of good-hearted as you.
Yeah.
And that it's okay to maintain that. And it's okay just to be unapologetic in who you are. Because if you're not for people, they're not your people.
Yeah.
And the right ones will gravitate to you in the end. So if you are unapologetic in how you present yourself, the right people will gravitate and the right people will stick around.
Yeah. Amazing. I hear you.
And they will be your tribe, and they will be your family, right?
Yeah, for sure. I've got a group of friends that are, we talk about this a lot, having all of these, diagnoses kind of coming out. Yeah, I totally agree.
Oh my God, you too? Like, how did we not know, right?
Yeah, it's so true. And I think surrounding yourself with people and getting rid of those people who aren't those good people as soon as you can is such a good piece of advice.
It's okay to walk away. And I think it's one of the things that so many of us do possess is, say, especially with rejection sensitive dysphoria, you're like, no, I just need to work harder. I need to work harder to keep that person in my life. You don't. Yeah. That's how I ended up with 18 shit marriages. Like you don't need to work hard to keep that person in your life. Let them go, because the right ones are there, and the right ones will stay, and the right ones are still out there. We haven't met them, some of them, yet.
Yeah, for sure. One of the reasons I wanted to start, this was to kind of build a community of people who have a lot of things in common, but we're able to open up and share with people, and not only go me smiling, knowing that I've been through exactly similar things to you. And it's just, it helps you in that progression. It helps you become your true self, and it helps you understand yourself so much better. And when you can open up and talk to people about it.
As I say, I got an official diagnosis at 55. And I think, it's kind of going, knowing smile where you kind of go, all this time I've known I was different. And now I know it's okay to be this level of normal. Right?
Yeah.
This is normal. We're just normal in a different way.
Exactly. And I think people as well, some people kind of grieve that the time that they didn't understand this.
Yeah.
And I think, I totally understand why people would. But at the same time, you've got to try and look forward, look at what you can now do with it. I think that's the way to go.
I've gone through a grief process, but now I'm at the point of going, okay, what next? Bring it.
For sure.
What's now?
Yeah.
What's next?
Brilliant. Well, Katriona, thank you so much. Honestly, I cannot
thank you for having me.
Thank you enough. It's just so great. So if anyone wants to check out your artwork, if they want to kind of get in touch or whatever, or see what you do, how can they do that?
Instagram is probably the best way, which is it's Katriona tattoo, or Threads with the same handle.
Lovely. All right. Thank you so much for your time. I'll obviously put everything in the show notes for anyone listening who wants to kind of find out more. But thanks for being on the podcast, and hopefully I'll speak to you again soon.
Thank you for having me.
That's all right. No worries. Okay, thanks so much for hanging out today. Look, if you related to any of this, the struggles, the wins, the holy cow, that's me moments, you need to be part of the ADHD Creative Club. This isn't just a podcast, it's a movement of neurodivergent creatives who are figuring this stuff out together. Head to theadhdcreative.club and sign up for tips, strategies, and real talk on surviving and thriving as a creative entrepreneur with ADHD. I'm Dave Neal, and remember, every single person you heard on this podcast felt exactly the same as you at some point. Lost, overwhelmed, wondering if they could make it work, and now look at them. Now it's your turn. See you in the next episode. Cheers.